Welcome back to Dataverse by Nino Ball. We are diving straight back into the deep end today. I'm thrilled to be here because we are tackling a subject that often gets labeled as back office plumbing, but is actually the heartbeat of every single scalable organization. This is episode number 15, and the topic on the table is modern data management.
It is great to be back. And you are so right to call it the heartbeat. I mean, if the data isn't flowing correctly, the organization basically goes into cardiac arrest. It's the difference between a company that just hoards information and one that actually, thinks with it.
Exactly. And before we get into the technical frameworks, and we have a really solid stack of sources today about life cycles and governance, I want to set the context a little. We're not talking about a small startup with one Excel sheet anymore. We're talking about organizations that are scaling. And as they scale, the data landscape gets messy.
Fast. Messy is, putting it politely, it's chaotic.
Right. You have data flowing in from websites, mobile apps, back-end legacy systems, third-party marketing tools. I mean, it is a fire hose that just never turns off. And the core tension our source material highlights is that the challenge is no longer just storing the data. Storage is cheap now.
Relatively cheap.
The challenge is managing all that complexity to make the data, and I'm quoting here, actionable and trustworthy.
That is the key phrase, actionable and trustworthy. As organizations scale that fire hose, it really turns into a flood. And if you don't have a mechanism to filter and route and clean that water, you just end up with a swamp.
You can't drink from a swamp.
You definitely can't. And you certainly can't build a strategy on top of one.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore how to turn that raw, chaotic input into a real strategic asset. We're going to look at the transition from simple storage to modern data management, walk through the 7-stage life cycle, and talk about this data mesh idea that keeps popping up everywhere.
It's a huge shift from a passive approach like just keeping files to a really active one where data is treated like a product.
So let's start with that shift. The sources distinguish heavily between traditional storage and what they call modern data management. Why is the old way breaking down? Is it just the volume, or is it something more structural?
It's both, but the structural issue is the real killer. When you're small, sure, a monolithic database works fine. But as you scale, that complexity increases non-linearly. The source points out that you can't rely on just basic infrastructure anymore. You need a well-defined framework. And the stakes have changed because the consumers of that data have changed.
You mean who or what is actually reading the data?
Exactly. I mean, we're not just generating monthly PDF reports for a board meeting. Not anymore. We're feeding real-time analytics and more AI models. Modern analysts are moving so fast toward AI-driven analytics. And for an AI to give you a useful answer, the data feeding it has to be, well, impeccable.
That makes a lot of sense. An AI model doesn't have the common sense to look at a spreadsheet and say, oh, that number looks like a typo. It just processes whatever you give it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If you feed an AI messy data, you're just automating bad decisions at the speed of light. And then there's the whole risk side of the equation.
Right.
Data breaches, privacy violations, GDPR. If you have poor management, you're not just inefficient, you are liable. The source is very clear on this. Poor management ruins your reputation and leads to huge legal penalties.
So the solution isn't just buy a bigger hard drive.
Not at all.
The solution our sources point to involves a shift toward data-centric computing and this concept of the data mesh. We'll get into the details of the mesh later, but give us the elevator pitch on that philosophy.
The philosophy is decentralized ownership. So instead of one central IT team being this bottleneck that manages every single data point, you treat data as a strategic asset that's owned by the specific domains that create it. But, and this is the crucial part, it's all managed under a universal standard.
So marketing owns marketing data, sales owns sales data, but they all have to speak the same language.
Correct. And that allows for much faster access to insights because you remove the middleman, but only if the governance is strong.
Okay, so to get to that nirvana of decentralized, clean data, you need a life cycle. Our notes outline a very specific 7 stages of the data management life cycle. I want to walk through this because it really feels like the roadmap for data's journey through a company.
Let's do it. This life cycle is the difference between a data swamp and a data lake.
Okay, stage 1, data acquisition and collection. This seems straightforward, we get the info. But the source mentions a crucial step right at the front door.
Yes. Validation. This is where most companies fail. They just accept data from social media, transactions, or manual entry without checking it first. The source emphasizes that validation must happen at entry.
So you're catching the errors before they even get in the system.
Exactly. You have to catch duplicates, formatting errors, or obvious biases the moment the data hits your API or the form. If you wait to validate at the end of the pipeline, it's already too late. You've corrupted the whole data set.
And you have to document how you got it.
Right. For transparency, you have to know how you got the data. If you don't know the source, you can't trust the insight.
That makes sense. Okay, on to stage 2. Data storage and protection. We touched on this, but it's not just dumping it in a cloud bucket, is it?
No, it's all about architecture. The text mentions cloud storage, on-premise solutions, RDBMS relational database management systems. The goal here is regular retrieval and integrity, storing it in a way that ensures completeness.
I imagine this is where the whole hot versus cold data idea comes in. The stuff you need every day has to be super accessible, and the regulatory archives just need to be secure.
That's right. It's a constant balancing act between cost, speed, and security.
Stage 3 is where the heavy lifting happens. Data usage, processing, and analytics. This is where we see those acronyms ETL and ELT.
This is the kitchen phase. Raw ingredients, your raw data, are usually inedible. You have to cook them. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. You pull data from different systems, like your CRM and your inventory system. You transform it into a standard format, and then you load it into your data warehouse.
And the goal here, according to the source, is to create a cohesive data set.
Yes. Integration is the key word. If your sales data says client A and your billing data says client A incorporated, a computer sees two completely different entities. Stage 3 is where you fix that so your decisions are based on reality.
Then comes stage 4, data sharing and collaboration. This feels like the part where security often breaks down.
It is the tension point. You need accessibility for teams to collaborate, but you also have privacy regulations and governance policies breathing down your neck. The source recommends cloud-native sharing solutions here. They let teams work on consistent databases without making, 5 different copies of the same file.
Which is just a version control nightmare waiting to happen.
Totally. Modern sharing lets you grant access to the data where it sits instead of emailing a spreadsheet that's obsolete the second you hit send.
Now, stage 5 is one I feel is the forgotten middle child of data management, data retention, and archival.
The source actually calls it the neglected phase.
Why is that? Is it just digital hoarding? We might need this in 10 years.
It's absolutely digital hoarding. But good optimization requires deletion. It sounds counterintuitive, but deleting data is a positive process if you do it right. You remove duplicates and redundant data to optimize storage costs and performance.
But you can't just hit delete all.
No, that's how you get sued. You need specific deletion policies. You have to know what you're legally required to keep and what's just taking up expensive space. It's all about strategic archiving.
Stage 6, data monitoring and quality assurance. This sounds like the security guard doing their rounds.
It is, but it needs to be an automated security guard. You can't do this manually at scale. The source talks about using anomaly detection tools. You want to find errors before they disrupt operations.
So instead of waiting for the CFO to scream that the numbers are wrong, the system flags that the sales figures for Tuesday look statistically impossible.
Exactly. Proactive over reactive. It involves regular audit trails, data refreshes.
And finally, stage 7, data governance and compliance assurance. This kind of loops us right back to the start.
It's the wrapper around everything. And the shift here, as described in the text, is moving past those rigid top-down rules toward that decentralized ownership model we mentioned. Governance isn't about saying no. It's about providing the guardrail so teams can say yes safely. It's what makes data a strategic asset that's responsibly managed.
So that's the life cycle, a continuous loop. But let's say I'm a CTO listening to this. I get the stages, but how do I actually build the infrastructure? The source outlines a roadmap.
Right. You can't just flip a switch. The roadmap is built on 3 guiding principles. First, the framework must be scalable. If your system works for 100 terabytes but breaks at 101, it's useless. It has to grow with you.
Second is modular. This is my favorite because tech changes so fast.
Oh, modularity is critical. You want to be able to swap out a component, your visualization tool, your storage layer, without having to rebuild the entire engine from scratch. It lets you adopt new tech without a massive overhaul.
And the third principle is autonomous.
Which brings us back to AI. We have to use automation to reduce manual intervention. If a human has to manually tag every single piece of data, you've already lost the game.
So based on those principles, the source outlines a phased cycle for implementation. What are the steps?
It's a 4-step cycle. Assess, design, deploy, adapt. First, assess your current state. Be brutally honest about how messy your data is. Second, design the architectures and policies. That's the blueprint phase. Third, deploy the actual tools and platforms. And fourth, adapt.
Adapt implies it's never really finished.
It is never finished. You have to monitor and upgrade constantly. And this is where the source really doubles down on that data mesh concept again. It reiterates the importance of autonomous data products.
Let's drill into that term, autonomous data products. What does that mean?
Think of it this way. Usually, data is just the exhaust fumes of a business process. In a data mesh, a team packages their data as a product. They're responsible for its uptime, its documentation, its quality, just like a software team is responsible for their app. This improves scalability because the central data team doesn't have to clean up everyone's mess. The teams clean their own mess before they share it with anyone else.
That is a massive cultural shift. But even with a perfect culture, things go wrong. Let's talk about the nightmare scenarios. The source explicitly covers the risks. What keeps leaders up at night?
The premise is that scaling invites vulnerability. The more doors you open, the more locks you need. The first category is data security risks.
The usual suspects.
Yep. Weak passwords, unauthorized access, inadequate backups. The source lists the mitigation strategies we all know but often fail to implement strictly. Encryption, multi-factor authentication, MFA and RBAC. Role-based access control.
I want to highlight RBAC because it connects right back to governance. It's not just about keeping hackers out. It's about making sure your own employees only see what they absolutely need to see.
Exactly, least privilege access.
Oh.
Then you have architectural risks. The enemy here is the monolithic data architecture and the dreaded data silos.
We talk about silos all the time. Why are they a risk and not just an annoyance?
Because they cause fragmentation. If marketing has one definition of churn and sales has a totally different one, and that data is locked in two different systems, the company is flying blind. The fix is a unified data platform and those ETL pipelines to ensure consistent formatting.
And then data governance risks.
This is all about trust. Inconsistent practices lead to a loss of trust in the data. If someone on your team finds 3 errors in a row, they're just going to stop using the dashboard. The fix is a federal governance model, central standards, but with decentralized execution.
And finally, data quality risks.
The silent killer. Missing values, outdated info. I mean, if you're shipping a product to an address from 3 years ago because your data is stale, you're just burning money. The fix is automated data validation scanning that runs constantly in the background.
Okay, we've covered the life cycle, the roadmap, the risks. Let's land the plane with some actionable advice. The source provides best practices for data leaders. If you're running a team, what should you be doing tomorrow?
The big challenge is balancing compliance with innovation. You can't lock the data down so tight that nobody can actually use it. So the first recommendation is embed governance into workflows.
Make it invisible.
As much as possible. Data usage shouldn't be a bottleneck. Use those RBAC systems and compliance tools so that security is part of the process, not some barrier. If people have to fill out a form every time they need to run a query, they will find a workaround. That's how you get shadow IT.
Recommendation number 2.
Prioritize decentralization. Move toward the data mesh. But, and the source has a specific warning here, without clear standards, decentralization just leads to chaos.
Right. Decentralization isn't anarchy, it's federalism.
That is a perfect analogy. Recommendation 3. Data quality is paramount. Apply cleansing methods in your ETL pipeline. Don't let dirty data into the warehouse. Stop it at the gate.
And the final one?
Continuous improvement. You have to conduct regular maturity assessments. And you need to maintain documentation and manual to record how things work. Data teams have high turnover. If the knowledge of your system leaves when an employee quits, you're in deep trouble.
So if we zoom out, what does this all mean for the listener? We've thrown a lot of frameworks around data mesh, ETL, RBAC.
If I had to synthesize the source material, I'd say modern data management is defined by 3 things: intelligence, decentralization, and continuous adaptability. It requires embracing what they call iterative governance. You have to be willing to change your rules as your data changes.
It effectively changes the definition of data within the company itself.
It does. It unlocks data's potential as a driver of growth instead of just being a record of what happened in the past.
That leads me to a final thought I want to leave with you, our listeners. We talked about data products earlier.
Yes.
So here's the provocation for you to mull over. Is your organization treating data as a byproduct of your work? Is it just the exhaust fumes that come out of the tailpipe while you drive the car? Or are you treating it as a standalone product? Does that data set have its own life cycle, its own product owner, and its own quality assurance metrics?
That is the pivotal question. If you treat it as a product, you value it. If you treat it as a byproduct, you eventually just discard it or ignore it.
And in the modern economy, the companies that treat it as a product are the ones that win.
Absolutely.
And that is a wrap for episode 15 of Dataverse by Ninopol. A huge topic, but hopefully we made it a little less daunting.
Thanks for listening. Keep refining those pipelines.
We will catch you on the next deep dive.